Hi everyone, my name is Kei. I'm going to be honest with you, I have no background in economics. I entered this class not even understanding the terminology. I've never been around people who speak of such things. I'm definitely surprised, and I definitely did not see myself ever talking about trading goods and flows and things of that nature. But something new happened this year. I realized that economics is not just math and numbers. Apparently it's not all about that. It's about trading goods and money. And when I realized also that economics was not just about trading money and goods, but it's actually about human beings moving, relationships being made and broken, that's when everything changed for me. I was immediately hooked. I was motivated to talk about something different. So my policy focuses on the Congo, but really this is an issue that I see across all of China and Africa relations. And that issue is the trade of the intangible. That is identity, dignity, agency, sovereignty. Things that people don't put on graphs, but everyone feels. The reason why I'm so passionate about it is because I generally find that dangerous, especially in a world that is moving towards an AI-driven future, where data is now like becoming the new cobalt, for example. So today I want to focus on why economics go beyond the physical goods, why the intangible goods are as important, if not more. Hello, I just want to give a quick, disclaimer. If I sound like I'm rushing, it's really just because this is such a deep conversation, or topic I should say, and I am limited by only 10 minutes. Also, if I seem like I'm zoning out, I truly apologize in advance. I am literally mentally depleted. So yeah, let's move on. Basically, this is the heart of my project. Congo sits at a crossroad. It is materially rich, but spiritually drained. After doing the readings, taking the course, I realized that the Africa-China relationship exposes something that I believe that the world doesn't talk about nearly enough, and that is how power moves through both the material and the intangible channels. So, I'm not going to read all of this. I'm going to leave it to you to go through it if you want, but I will briefly explain it in this way. Congo basically powers the modern world, okay? Our phones, our vehicles, our electronics, EV batteries, and even AI chips that will be used heavily in the near future rely on the Congolese cobalt and coltan. Yet Congo itself remains in a cycle of instability, poverty, and exploited labor. I started to ask myself, especially after taking this course, why does a country that holds the future not hold its own? How can it have so much power yet it's not? Very contradicting. I realized that it was deeper than just physical goods that we often talk about in economics. This is very ethical and spiritually related and caused. When material leave without sovereignty, without respect, without clear boundaries and laws in place to protect an identity, dignity leaves with them. So it's not only physical traits that are being traded here. I'm saying that there's dignity, which in other words, soul, being traded here. Economics usually tells us that trade is about four main things: goods, services, capital, and labor. And while that is true, I also find it incomplete. I find that this only explains the visible and physical side of exchange. What I've realized and what shaped my policy brief as well is that trade is invisible too. It's that trade also includes invisible components. And here are three main ones. There is identity, there is dignity, and there is sovereignty. Basically, legitimacy to exist. These travel between nations just as much as oil, cobalt, and capital, and that's something that I've learned. When Africa trades minerals without controlling the terms, what's really being traded is sovereignty. When Chinese or Western companies undervalue African labor, what's really being traded is the dignity. And when Africa becomes positioned as the supplier, what's being traded is the identity, how the world sees us. So I'm going to let you just look at that on your own, but basically that is the point. There is more than physical goods being traded, once again. Moving on, let me move my bubble, because last time I didn't and I was blocking the title. Haeckel's concept of 8 in reverse sharpened this for me. I wasn't able to do all of the readings, but there were a few that attracted me and I knew would support what I was trying to write on. and this was one of them. So he basically shows that Africa loses more in illicit financial flows than it receives in aid, meaning that the world isn't giving to Africa. Africa is giving to the world. And I agree. This helped me see that extractions aren't just physical and that it's structural. It impacts how Africans see themselves and how we're being seen globally as well, right? And I think that's something to worry about as Africans. All right, time to move my bubble again. So, Brotigam, I don't know how to pronounce his name, and Huang, they helped me understand how debt fits into this. This was actually one of my favorite readings. It showed me that debt isn't just money owed, it's a form of governance. That's how you keep and maintain your control over another. When China holds 30% of African debt, the negotiation power shifts. When repayment terms tighten, domestic priorities shrink. Debt quietly decides what countries can do and what it cannot do. So Congo ends up in this paradox, basically, holding the minerals that power the world and hold the future, while it's still lacking the power to shape its own development path. It doesn't grow. It's not just the minerals leaving, it's the ability to decide what they mean for the nation. They don't have control over that. As you can see here, they're very rich in minerals, owning 70% of global cobalt. That's enormous, lots of power there, yet poor population. Here it shows that a person annually may receive maximum up to $580, very concerning. And here you can see that the foreign value capture, as noted here, reported in 2018 to 2023, 16.8 billion is underreported. This is unacceptable. This is absolutely wrong. What happens if nothing changes? Basically, if nothing changes, the world will enter a green energy and AI future built on Africa minerals, but without African participation. It will literally use the soul of Africa while Africa doesn't exist, which to me personally, I believe has been happening for a very long time. That is essentially, if you think about it, exporting the continent's destiny. The danger is not just economics, it's generational and it's spiritual. Biosovereignty is my proposed framework. It says protect the material and the intangible. Treat minerals, data, and labor and identity as sacred, because sovereignty is not only legal, it's moral, it's cultural, and it's spiritual. So what I'm saying is that the laws, the structures, the policies has to include that intangible flow. So for my policy reform blueprint, my 5 reforms are practical but also ethical in nature. First one is contract transparency. The second one is AU collective bargaining. The third, local manufacturing. And the fourth, diaspora equity. The fifth being reciprocity, a word that I don't know how to pronounce, clauses. And each one protects both the economy and the soul of the nation. I will leave it up to you to read the details, because again, I'm limited in time. So Afosu and Sarpong and Abegi help me understand the labor side. Transfer is not happening at the level promised. So even when Africa gets infrastructure, it doesn't always get empowerment. That's why I say infrastructure without identity is dependency, infrastructure without dignity is exploitation, and infrastructure without agency is spiritual erosion. At the end of the day, Africa can trade minerals, right? Africa can trade services, it can trade labor, but Africa cannot continue to trade its identity. It cannot trade its dignity and it cannot trade its agency. And I believe that this is something that we have to put more attention to. Take more initiatives to protect. Because once those are gone, everything else becomes negotiable, including the future. Biosovereignty simply says Africa must never again develop the world at the expense of its own soul. We can do trades, that's okay. Having these relationships with China and other nations is absolutely okay. But it cannot be at the expense of its own soul. Thank you.